All right, guys. Welcome back to the Addictively Speaking podcast. I'm your host, James, and today I have a guest. His name is Zachary Raskins, and he has quite an interesting journey. He sent me a brief little bio, and it seems like it was a wild ride. So we're just going to get right into it. Zachary, it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast, and give everybody a brief little rundown of who you are and what you do, and we'll just get into chatting, all right?
Hey, thanks so much, James. Appreciate you having me on today. I'm just a guy. I'm just a guy who's trying to figure out his life, and luckily these days I'm able to focus a little bit more on that, on moving forward in life versus just escaping life. And what my life is about these days is just figuring out ways on how I can be of service to others and how I can continue to just give back to the world in certain ways. My life consists of a lot these days of, doing service work in the form of helping to feed people, helping the houseless community, helping with various different ministries. I go to all sorts of different churches. I don't subscribe to any like religion in a sense, but I do, prescribe to God and being a vessel for God to use on this earth to do his will. But that's not how my life used to be, obviously, which is why I'm here today.
Why we're here. Yeah, absolutely. So you gave me a brief rundown, so let's just talk about the beginning. So you were adopted.
Yeah, I was adopted by a single mother.
Okay. Whereabouts were you born? Where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in what seemed to be a small town, Kissimmee, Florida, right outside of Orlando.
Yeah.
It was a little rodeo town.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually my first job when I was 12 years old, was the rodeo every Friday night. I'd go and I started out working with the little calves and then moved on up to the big bulls and did all these various sorts of things. I had the cowboy hat and the Wranglers and the whole shebang.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But, I will say that at that time in my life as well, as working with the rodeo and dressing like a cowboy and all this, I didn't know what my identity was whatsoever. So there was the rodeo Zach, and then there was this whole opposite side where if I wasn't dressed in this cowboy persona, then I was dressed like all gothic, like all black, baggy pants, baggy clothes.
Okay.
And,
so you were kind of like looking for who you were,
Exactly. I never really felt like I fit into anything or with anyone, so I tried all the different walks out in a sense.
Okay, so you just like almost like a chameleon. You were looking to blend in with whatever was around you at the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
So when did you start messing with drugs or alcohol or any of that kind of stuff? When did that come into your life?
So the last day of 5th grade, actually, I was invited to go hang out with some people that lived in a neighborhood close by that my mother was very protective, and she didn't want me hanging out with the kids in this particular neighborhood. I thought she was just being maybe overly protective and a little judgmental. But that's the first day I hung out over there was the first day that I smoked weed. And that was the first time that I felt like maybe I belonged to something, because I was actually hanging out with a bunch of different kids, and we all had a common interest in that time, which was getting high.
Wow, that's interesting. That's 5th grade. It's quite young to be introduced to that, and you were a guy who was searching for, it looks like, acceptance or something of that nature, to be part of something, and that's kind of what brought you into it. But where did it take you from there?
So from there, I started to lie to my mom, started to lie often and say that I was going to hang out with different kids. that earlier in 5th grade, actually that same year, I was hanging out with this family, and I was going to church with them on Sundays. I personally grew up without any religion or any. My family was Jewish, but they didn't really go to synagogue or anything.
Okay.
So from an early age, I did have this yearning for wanting to know what else was out there. And I started hanging out with these kids that were going to church. But then the last day of 5th grade, that all stopped. I started to lie to my mom that summer, saying that I was hanging out with them, but I was really going across the street to the other neighborhood to go smoke weed and to drink and to just do things that weren't necessarily productive. The kids that I was hanging out, I don't remember what summer it was. It was either that summer or the following summer. But we went on a bike ride to go buy some more weed. But the dude wasn't home, or he wasn't awake. It was really late at night. It was probably like 12 a.m.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And we went on a bike ride to go buy some weed, and we only had like $10 or $15. And on the way, they started to put their bicycles down and go up to cars, and then proceeded to break into cars. So then we went around and we did that to a few neighborhoods actually. And that was also the first time that I was arrested. So I was being involved in criminal activity. Then I was arrested, and yeah, that wasn't the last time either. That was just the first of many times, and mostly drug related or DUIs. That's just how my life was going. It just continued to not care.
So the drugs and alcohol were taking you down a path that wasn't really great for you.
Exactly.
Especially as a youth, you're doing things, and you're doing things with people to fit in, to feel part of like their thing. So like if they're breaking into cars, you're breaking into cars, right? Like it's kind of like that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you started doing all that, and that was, how old were you about? Was it 5th, 6th, 7th grade? Middle school age? Yeah,
that was probably like 7th. That was probably 7th grade that summer.
Okay. So everything seems to be like escalating at this point. So you went from just like smoking weed, now you're doing some breaking and entering into cars. What happened?
Taking other like prescription medicine, or not prescription drugs that kids were getting from their parents. And at that time I was just like, oh yeah, give me whatever. So I started to take pills, was drinking, and that led to getting into fights in school. That led to skipping school altogether. Right. Which ultimately led to me. Go ahead.
Did you finish school? Did you finish high school? Did you graduate?
No, it ultimately led to me just dropping out of school in 9th grade. I barely even went to school in 9th grade. I remember, there's 2 lunch periods in the school that I went to, and I would skip. From day one, I was skipping. I think it was science class or something. I was just skipping that class and going to both lunch periods. And and then eventually, a couple months into it, they caught me, and I got suspended. Oh, how they caught me was I walked out of the cafeteria, and there was some kid causing some trouble with this girl, and so I got up in his face, and then him and I ended up. Well, it wasn't him. We ended up getting in an argument, and then I turned around, and his friends all just sort of jumped on me and jumped me. And so the reason I was even caught in the first place was I was in a fight in school. And then that led to being suspended. Then I was just going to school drunk and high all the time. I was being pulled to the side by the principal, by the teachers, being sent to the principal's office over and over again. Until one day my mom came home and caught me skipping school. And she was like, why don't we just go and pull you out? So we went. I dropped out of school there, right then and there. It was interesting too,
Wow.
because she was a school teacher, but she was just tired of me.
It's interesting that she was the one who suggested, like, why don't we just pull you out of school?
Yeah. She knew I had
That
no
might,
desire to be there.
right. What was your relationship with your adopted mother? Like, what was it? Was it a good relationship, or was it a rocky relationship? Because you're doing all these things,
Yeah.
and it's got to be causing some type of grief at home.
Oh,
And
totally.
does your mom know? Yeah, does your mom know anything about the drugs and the alcohol and any of that kind of stuff at this point?
Not really. I'm sure she knew, but she was, I think, trying to not see me in that way. But then, at the same time, however, I was grounded for a majority of my childhood, so that's why I started to lie a lot. Like I basically became a pathological liar at an early age with my mother, and especially because there would be repercussions that I didn't want to happen.
Right.
And so I was in my garage. I remember my mom she had no idea what I was doing, but she bought me all sorts of tools and stuff one Christmas. She really was a great mother who tried to provide everything for me and my brother. And Christmases were great. She bought all sorts of different presents, and one year I got basically a workshop, and that was put in the garage. But all I made with the tools was different like pipes and apparatuses to get high with.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, anybody who smokes weed will know how to make a pipe out of just about anything you can give them.
Yeah, exactly.
I've seen some pretty creative stuff come from people where they're just like, "Do you got one of these and one of those?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like MacGyver. The next thing you know, they're like, "Listen, man, I got a bong here," and you're like, "Shit, okay." I don't know how you've done that, but that's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was it became like a hobby of mine. And I started to sell those. And then and then shortly after that I started to sell whatever was necessary to put in them. So I was like selling weed at a very young age. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask you about that because it says, you started selling at a young age, joining gangs, things like that. What made you decide that that was the route you were going to take as a teenager? Like, was anything pushing you in that direction, or were you just like, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to do right now.
Honestly, I thought that was what cool people did. I remember I had no sense of my personal identity whatsoever. And growing up watching different movies and things, I always thought that the bad boy was the cool kid, basically. So I was trying to be the baddest of them all so I could just put on this persona that I was cool, I guess.
Do you feel like that? Do you feel like subconsciously that had something to do with being an adopted child because you didn't know your parents and it was kind of like not belonging to anything? You like, is that like do you think it's like a deep-seated thing in your subconscious somewhere, like that you had from like early age?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'd say so. I've been looking at a lot of that over the years, especially with different things that I've dealt with like abandonment and just different trust issues and such. And yeah, just from the very beginning of just being adopted and given up at birth,
I imagine that's like it's a difficult road to go down. And I think from a young age, when did you know early on that you were adopted? Like, when did you find out? Were you younger or were you older, or like when exactly did you know?
I was pretty young. I think I remember like at around 10 or something like that. I remember having a conversation with my mother.
Do you think that made it harder? Like, do you think like that made it tougher on you? I mean, 10, that's quite a young age to be discussing such a heavy thing with it. I mean, you're quite young. I mean, you're not developed mentally to handle something of that nature. Do you think that really caused some problems for you? Like,
It could have.
yeah.
Yeah, it could have. I'm not 100% sure. I just knew that even before that, though, I just never felt like I belonged. I remember in elementary school, yeah, just feeling as if I never really fully identified with anybody or anything. Just trying to find my place. And I don't
Yeah.
think I was
Yeah.
adopted at that time. Or I don't think I knew that I was adopted at that time.
You just had this overwhelming feeling that
Yeah,
surrounded you that whole time.
exactly.
That's interesting, because I mean, I imagine there are other people that have been adopted that have like that same type of feeling,
Right.
that they can't explain, and they don't know why, and it's just something that they hold on to. So we get to high school, you drop out in ninth grade. Where do you go from there?
Yeah. So I was working a lot. And whenever I wasn't working, I was probably lying and saying that I was working, but really going and hanging out with some guys down the road. And a couple of them were actually wanted felons.
Mm.
And they ended up coming and moving into our garage. My mother we had a 2-car garage. One of the like was converted into like a playroom in a sense. So I had my drum set there. I also started painting at a young age, and I ended up painting like a huge portrait of the devil in that room. So this was also looking back on it now, this was also a driving force in my choices. Although I wasn't necessarily on a spiritual path, I feel as if I was being influenced by certain spirits, like
Right.
demonic spirits in a sense.
Yeah, pulling you towards the negative. Yeah.
Exactly. And I ended up inviting these 2 wanted felons to live and hide out in my mother's garage. She had no idea, but in that room they were sleeping. And one day they didn't come home at night, but I knew where they were, so I decided to go, and I knew where my mom kept her keys, and we had an alarm that would go off whenever you open up a window or anything, but I rigged the alarm to where you couldn't, like, it wouldn't go off if I opened up my window. So I snuck out, took her keys, snuck out the window, and pushed the car down the driveway, and then taught myself how to drive that evening, and went and met up with these dudes. And I remember that same night, there ended up being a cop behind me. I'm like, oh no, I hope I'm not. And I'm driving with both feet, like one pedal, one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake. I don't know how to drive. And then he turned off, and I just remember being like, oh man, thank goodness. But I continued to take it every night, basically, for the next few months.
Once you knew you could get away with it, you were like, that's it. I'm just gonna take this car.
Exactly. Yeah. I was going out, and I was going to my drug dealer's house, who I was getting things from in order to sell back to others in the long run. I remember one night, whenever I pulled up there, we were sitting in their living room, and they were showing me their shotgun. They're like unloading this new gun they got. And then I look up, I hear like a cock, not from right there, but someone cocking a gun, and it's right up on the staircase, and it's pointed right at me. And this dude was about to blow my face off because they're all tweaked out. That dude didn't know who I was. He thought I was there to rob them, and all he heard was a gun downstairs.
Oh, man.
So that was an interesting encounter. And right around that same time, within a few week period, I was on my bicycle during the daytime over at near near this neighborhood that was known for heavy drug trafficking and such. But I was there attempting to sell things.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting a couple of guys pulled up on me and put a gun to my back and then searched me to see if I had anything on me to steal. But luckily I had what I had on me hidden well enough to where they didn't find it, and they didn't use that gun on me any further. So those are some of my childhood experiences with that.
It sounds like you're putting yourself in some dangerous situations as an adolescent.
Yeah, I think I found it fun and like thrilling in a sense.
Yeah, a little exhilarating, a little bit dangerous. Yeah, the adrenaline of it all kind of probably took over, and then, like you said, you were looking to fit in. You were looking to be the baddest of the bad. You wanted to be the cool guy, who was doing all them bad things, so that you would fit in with those people that you were running with. So you get older. What happens in your young adulthood? Where does it go from there?
From there, I ended up being caught one night with whenever I took my mom's car. I was actually at what I was doing with it sometimes was I had a fake ID, so I was frequenting the strip club often. I was like 15 or 16 years old, going to the strip club all the time. And one night I went out. Actually, I ended up being a pimp there without even realizing it. There was one of the ladies invited me out to she said that she needed my help with her friend or whatever, and I just went. She just needed me in the car with her to go meet up with somebody, and she had this. She said, "Oh, he's taking care of me tonight. Give him $200." Talking to me to this dude, and the dude handed me $200, handed her some money, and then I went off. She's like, "All right, I'll come pick you up in a little bit." It was like, anyways, it was an interesting. I didn't realize till years later that I was sort of a pimp that night, but right around that same time, I was at the strip club one night. I went to the gas station to get a can of soda. I remember I was dumping out the can of soda because I just wanted to use it to make a pipe with. Then I got a call from my mom. It was like 1 a.m. I'm like, oh no. She knows that I'm gone. She knows that her car is gone. Anyways, it ended up being a big ordeal. Shortly after that, I ended up leaving my mom's house. I moved out, and I moved in with some other friends or acquaintances that I knew in the next town over, so I could continue to just get on doing what I wanted to do, which was to get high and to sell drugs. So that's when I started to experiment with other things. Started to experiment with just all sorts of different things at that time in life.
Okay.
Got robbed a few more times. I almost did some bad things to people. Luckily, each time I attempted to, somebody either stood in front of me or something blocked it from happening. But yeah, my life was going down nowhere. It was going to nowhere. When I was about 20 years old, just fast forward a little bit, I took a trip to Tennessee with a friend of mine, and we were just getting drunk and high the whole time. And then luckily I left him at his brother's house one night, and I went to a family reunion that was in Tennessee every year. So I went there. I was there for a few hours, and I went to go meet up with a childhood friend that I knew, this girl. And we got really drunk that night. I thought that I was going to go and stay with her that evening, but she had a boyfriend, and I wasn't really welcome to stay there with her and her boyfriend. So I'm like, hey, the farm that I was staying at for the family reunion was only like an hour and a half away. like, I can make it there. So I started driving after drinking a lot, and I woke up and I was in the median. I'm like, oh, man. All right, well, I better turn up the music. That'll keep me awake. So I turn up the music, had some subwoofers in the back. I'm like, that'll definitely keep me awake. Just put on some like loud rap music, and the next thing you know, I wake up and I'm on the side of the road this time. I'm like, oh man. And I look over and I see all the cars stopped in the road. When I'm thinking to myself, I'm on the side of the road. Man, it must have been in an accident. So I tried to start the car to get out of there because I was just going to flee the scene because I had, I didn't care.
Yeah.
But the car's not starting. It's just like gears are grinding. It's just, I'm like, all right, I better get out, get rid of the drugs, get rid of the alcohol. So now I got out of the car, and now I see why all the cars are stopped in the road on the interstate, because I look over to my right and there's a semi truck laying on its side blocking all lanes of traffic. And there's this guy running at me. His arm is all bloody. He's running at me to see if I'm okay. And then I look over at my car. My car is literally completely like just, it doesn't even look like a car. It doesn't look like, it's just completely smashed and mangled and everything. And the ambulance and the police showed up eventually. They asked me if I saw who was driving the car, and I'm like, well, I was driving that car. How are you? There's absolutely no way that you were driving that car. The person who is driving that car should not be here, standing here, telling us that they're driving that car. Like that, they should be like 100 yards out, not moving.
Yeah.
They're like, if you, like, man. Then one of them looked at me and said, somebody must be really looking out for you because there's no way that you should be here.
Yeah, that sounds crazy. But you know what? They say, when people are drunk and they're driving and they get in an accident, like terrible accidents like that you just, because you're so drunk and so out of it, your body just kind of goes with what's happening, and it doesn't actually, like, in a normal accident, you tense up and you brace yourself because you know it's coming, right? And that's what causes all, like, bone breaks and things like that. And being gelatinous and drunk, you just kind of like fly through the thing. That's crazy. So you made it out of you made it out of this catastrophic accident.
Yeah, exactly.
Where you were, I mean, imagine you were arrested for that.
Yeah. Well, I was definitely arrested for it. I spent the night in jail, and like a year earlier, I spent 6 months in jail, being pulled over with 6 pounds, half a pound of weed. And then the person I was with told them I was where the other 6 pounds was. So those two occurrences, you'd think that I would get something, right? I would like wake up to some fact that I need to change my life. Being robbed multiple times before that, being almost shot, being in jail multiple times, you'd think that something would click, and I'd be like, all right, my life needs to change, but that didn't even
nothing. Didn't even faze you.
Nope. I'm like, all right, well, went back to Florida, eventually got tried, got probation. Every time I just got lucky. Every single time I was arrested, I got so lucky. The 6 months in jail, I mean, if my mother, you asked how my mother was, she was like very, very, she loved me the best she could, but she also spent a lot of money on lawyers and stuff with me. And, but that could have enabled me a little bit, with her just continuing to sort of bail me out.
Right. You knew you were gonna get away with it, and if not get away with it, at least get charges reduced that you're not actually spending significant amount of time in jail. I mean, 6 months is a pretty good stint. It was a county jail, county jail.
Yeah, it was a county jail. But at that time in Michigan, the laws were harsh. Like now, it's legal there, but back then the laws were pretty harsh, and I probably would have gotten a few years if it wasn't for.
Yeah. So you say that, you say that all this stuff is happening and let's fast forward a little bit. When did you, was there any type of realization that you, the moment where you just like, I need to start making some different choices, or I need to go down a different path? When was that?
Yeah. So I was 20 whenever that DUI happened. Fast forward through a few more arrests, a few more different occasions that now I'm 23 and I'm married and I'm in a very sort of toxic relationship. I wasn't in a good role, which says I probably didn't attract the most healthy person in my life. So two unhealthy people.
It's a recipe for disaster, people. I can attest to this. I was in the same type of thing. Wasn't married, but I was in one of the most toxic relationships, and I was heavily drinking, and it was not a great place to be.
Yep, exactly. It wasn't. And then at 24, at the beginning of the year 2011, I saw that needed to change. I thought that if I left the relationship, then life would change. So I left that relationship. I tried to stop doing certain things that I was doing, but then I just replaced them with other just toxic things. And I continued down the path until October 3rd of 2011, whenever I was at a brewery. I had a full beer in my hand. I had some drugs in the car. And I was there. My whole family was at this brewery because my cousin is a singer, and she was singing that night at this brewery. And I was there, had the full beer in hand. I was around all my family, but it felt like I was there alone. And my family was so far apart because nobody wanted anything to do with me. I've broken everyone's trust so much. They were just, they
were done.
Exactly. And right then and there, I just felt this moment. I had this moment of clarity, and I felt like God say to me, like, what are you doing? Wake up. You need to stop doing everything that you are doing and just remember who you are, basically. Stop doing all this before you end up in debt or in prison. And I had this full beer in my hand. I threw it out. Then I got back to my girlfriend's house that I had been dating for a couple of weeks. I threw out the drugs that I had in the lake. And then 2 days later, I went into AA, and I actually listened this time. I was court ordered to go to it many times before, but I never actually listened. I was just there to get a paper signed. Now I was
not going to work.
Yeah. It's there to listen. And that's whenever I actually got on a better path.
So you started AA?
Yeah. Started AA after a couple of days of detoxing, just like shaking and just not knowing what to do, realizing I had no idea how to live my life, and ended up moving in with my girlfriend to the next city over. And right down the road from her, there was this great clubhouse, and they had meetings at 6 a.m., 10 a.m., 12 p.m., 6 p.m., 8 p.m. And then down the road, there was another meeting that was at 10 p.m. And I was basically going to all those meetings for this first couple of months, like 5-6 meetings a day.
Wow. Yeah. Did you find that was what was keeping you on that sober path? Was that was the foundation of your recovery right there? It was like those meetings.
I knew that I needed another way to live life, and I didn't know how to live it. And that was my foundation of recovery, was going to those meetings. Otherwise I would have probably just fallen into the old habits. But the thing was, is I was, the first few months, I just didn't really want to do any work. I just wanted to go to meetings. I didn't want to do any steps or anything like that.
Yeah, it's just kind of like, yeah, because I went to I only went to a 12-step program one time, and
Yeah.
it wasn't for me, and I wasn't in the right place to do it anyway. Personally, I couldn't get behind it, and it was just, to me, it was just, I couldn't really do it. But I know that it's so powerful and it works for so many people, and I think it's like, if something does help you, and you needed to be there, and you needed that support circle around you to help you, because like you said, you didn't know what to do with your life, and you didn't even know how to live a life that wasn't the previous life that you were living, right? So it's probably better that you were doing that than anything else at that time anyway, because it probably kept you focused on the task at hand. So
Exactly.
How long did you go before you started like actually working the steps and like working the program?
A few months, I'd say probably like 3 months or something like that. The first sponsor that I had, ended up firing. He fired me after like a month of not really doing anything. Then I found this other dude. This other dude walked in, and what attracted me to asking him if he would sponsor me was heard him talking to one of his sponsees. He's like, "Oh, there's no hot chicks here. Let's go to another meeting." I'm like, "Oh, that sounds like the kind of person that I want to mentor me." Shows you how little.
Yeah, still making bad decisions. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then I was surprised whenever I found out that he was telling people about things I was telling him in confidence, and that set me off, and I ended up just getting really irritated and firing him. And then I was searching for somebody to actually work the steps with, and this guy said something in a meeting one day, and he said, whatever you focus on most throughout your day, that is your God, whether it be money, whether it be sex, whether it be whatever, whether it be God, whether it be love, whatever you're focusing on most in the day, that is your God. And there's just something about what he said and how he shared that really inspired me to ask him if he would sponsor me. And that was a great decision on my part, because he ended up being a really great guide. And through working the steps with him and actually working the steps, I began to have like encounters with God. I began to see God everywhere, within everyone and within everything. And I began to, after starting meditating and such, I began to just have these intuitive connections with God. And that's been my driving force this last 10 years of my life. I've left AA in 2013. Bill Wilson, the founder of AA, said that AA is essentially spiritual kindergarten. Once you get that, it's important to continue on and seek deeper spiritual truths. I'm paraphrasing. I don't know if that's exactly how he said it, but he said something like that.
Yes, something to that effect.
Yeah. And so that's what my life had been. It's been just seeking deeper spiritual truths and knowledge, and I ended up leaving everything behind. And I had a business that I was starting that was becoming pretty successful, but nothing in this world was making sense to me.
Okay.
I didn't know why people were working so hard to make a paycheck, to just doing something that they don't love doing, just to do this repeated cycle of just going to work or creating a business that has no significant value to them, stressing out, creating different sorts of disease in their life, and on repeat and repeat and repeat. Made no sense. So I wanted to figure out the deeper meanings to life. So I got rid of everything. Ended up trading my car for a school bus that I saw at this event, and started traveling and had no plan as to where I was going, but just started going and praying and meditating and asking for God to guide me and wherever that would be. And that's led me to just travel all around this world. Not all around the world, but in various different places around this world.
Did you stay in the United States? Did you go to Europe? Did you where did God guide you? Where did he take you?
So I started in Florida, and so I explored Florida a bit, and that state's quite a big state.
Yeah.
And from Florida, I felt this inspiration to go to California. And then from California, I was going to go through Mexico, through Central and South America. But I got to California, and my bus broke down, and I ran out of money, and my phone broke, and my computer wouldn't work. So I'm on the other side of the country, and I was completely cut off from everything that I knew. And the bus that I was in it broke down on Venice Beach. It got towed away, and I'm walking around Venice Beach for a little while. Then I'm walking around California, Los Angeles, basically homeless, not having any sort of not knowing, but living a life of like homelessness basically, because I was wanting God to guide me, but I wasn't completely surrendered to God's will for me at the same time. And I wasn't able to receive any of the things that God was sending my way, if that makes sense. So
yeah.
I was wanting to seek these deeper truths. I was walking around with some things on me, and like I had a backpack, and I had a djembe drum, and I had some other just things that like a briefcase or like a suitcase of things. Whenever the bus got towed away, I ended up had that for about 5 days. And then I ended up just leaving it on the street in front of a Subway in Hollywood. After I was around this circle of people that were doing like they were freestyling and doing poetry, and this girl said something that was to the effect of, "Are you going to remain stagnant, or are you going to be a hunter-gatherer?" And that, to me, seemed like God speaking through her to me, saying that all this baggage that I had on me was keeping me stagnant from going deeper into the truths that he wanted me to find. So I left it all there, walked off the other direction. I even took off my shirt, took off my shoes, and just completely surrendered. I was also very imbalanced at this time, because going from living a life of sort of structure through AA to now living a life of complete freedom, not doing drugs, not doing anything, but like completely spiritually open. It was like sort of a imbalanced period. And I ended up just walking off, and I was just completely surrendered. I was just completely surrendered to start from nothing, to start from scratch. But I wasn't fully surrendered to God either. I was surrendered to the spiritual realm. I wanted God to guide me, but I wasn't very specific or discerning against any spirits that were sort of coming in. So it became a very chaotic time in life. It was a lot of spiritual attacks, and it was quite it was just a very interesting journey, until I pleaded to God. It became very scary. It became very dark, and I realized that I was sort of going in two directions on this spiritual path. I was working with the dark side, and I was working with the light side. And then I finally just repented from the darkness and just asked God to fully guide me. I asked for the true creator of all things, for only the light of all to guide me. And then I was done with the darkness and stuff. So yeah, I was going down this really interesting spiritual path.
During that time, did you find it hard to stay sober? With
I
having
did.
such a spiritual battle, I mean, there's got to be some things pulling you back to that, to escape, or to you know what I mean, to do something, right?
Yep, I did. And I actually started smoking weed again.
Okay.
Yeah. So I started smoking weed again, and this time I was using the excuse that I was using it for spiritual purposes.
Okay.
So this is also another deception of the devil, of the addiction, of the dark side, whatever someone wants to say. It's another deception that can be used, is that now it's going to be used as a spiritual medicine when really it's just a drug. So I started smoking weed again, and with the lie that I would only smoke it once, but for any addict that has that experience of thinking they're going to do something one time, it's not. That doesn't really work.
Yeah, it's not generally the case, is it? And then
Yeah.
that excuse makes another excuse that makes another excuse that makes another excuse. There'll always be a reason why you're going to use whatever
Exactly.
you're using. And like, you were quite good at manipulation and lying and things of that. So you could probably make yourself believe what you're telling yourself is what's real. Like, you're saying it's for a spiritual journey, I'm doing this to get closer to the goal, but it was just to escape what was happening in your life, turmoil.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was fooling myself for sure. And that just led to me continuing to smoke it, continuing to just, from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep. Also thinking that, tomorrow I'll stop. Tomorrow I'll stop. Tomorrow. Fast forward a few years, because I did. I smoked it for a few years after that. Well, actually, that's not true. At that time, up to that time, whenever I fully repented from that, I asked God to remove that from me, and I ended up getting rid of I was smoking tobacco as well. I never actually gave up tobacco. I started smoking that at a young age, but now, I was able to stop smoking weed, and I stopped smoking tobacco, and it was all right before, at the time that I was going through these major highs, major lows, and just I was literally on my way to check myself into a mental hospital because I was going through these severe highs and lows. And a friend called me and asked me how I was doing, and I told her, and she gave me a suggestion of some natural herbs that I could try that are good for mental balance. Not drug herbs, but like herbs that help with things. And so I got off at the next bus stop. I was taking the city bus to the mental hospital, and got off, went into a Walgreens. I found that it was called St. John's wort. And I got a bottle of St. John's wort. I took some, and it immediately brought some balance to me. And then I was able to just focus on praying again, and meditating again. And I was able to get the weed and the tobacco out of my life. And then I continued to travel. At that time, I was staying in. I went back to Orlando, and I was staying in Orlando trying to deal with this crazy spiritual warfare that I was going through.
What happened after that? Did you find balance?
I found balance, yeah, and then I proceeded to start traveling again. I found a lot of balance, and this time I was traveling with more of a purpose and more of a just wanting to just focus fully on God. I ended up leaving, and I went to North Carolina. I caught a ride there, And I had the intention that I wanted to learn at that time in life. I want to learn more about herbalism. I wanted to learn more about yoga, and I wanted to learn more about permaculture. And as soon as I got in North Carolina, I was just following God's intuitive guidance. And I went into the store where I met this girl who just finished yoga teacher training. She invited me to her graduation event that was happening on the permaculture farm that she was living at with a bunch of herbalist roommates. And I was invited to live there. So right away, all those those three intentions came into fruition. And I continued to travel around the world like that. So I traveled around the world now sober with just the clothes on my back and a water bottle, just going with faith. So around the world again, that's around the U.S. multiple times. That's in 2015. I ended up getting a ride from Florida to Arizona. Then from Arizona, the person I got a ride with, they got me a passport. And from there, I met somebody who offered to buy me a plane ticket to Mexico to do some work around her house. So I did some work around her house, and she got me a plane ticket to Mexico. She was taking me to the airport, and on the way to the airport, she asked me how much money I had. I told her I had $2. She's like, I can't let you go to Mexico with $2. So she gave me $50 more. So I went to Mexico with $52, a water bottle, and I think I actually had a little backpack for a change of clothes. But that was it. I landed and hitchhiked around Mexico. Spent the $52 the first day. I got a hostel room. And then the next day I had a few pesos left, just enough to find like the cheap bus. And I had to find like a local person to take me to like the cheap bus, like the locals took. It's called the Colectivo. So I took the Colectivo from Mexico City to Oaxaca State. And then I started hitchhiking. And I hitchhiked around the country of Mexico for a couple of months until I was hitchhiking one day. I was in the jungle of Palenque, and Mexico was great. It was wonderful. It was I met so many open-hearted people there, and no matter where I was, I always had a place to sleep and I always had food to eat. Although I had no money, I met people at the right time, even though I didn't speak the language, but I always met people at the right time who would just offer me a place to sleep and food to eat. It just would always happen.
That's amazing.
And, yeah, it was absolutely amazing. Just praying, asking God to guide my every move, my every step. It would just take me to the right people at the right time every night. And ended up in Puerto Escondido. I met this medicine woman there who invited me to stay at her hotel for a while. I ended up going to that hotel first, and I offered the jewelry that I had on. And I think some people gave me some money throughout my time, although I never really asked for money. I offered her like the few pesos that I had, probably like 20 pesos, which is the equivalent to $1 US. And I offered her whatever pesos I had, plus the jewelry. And she gave me a little hut to stay in. She wouldn't take the jewelry. She took the money. But then from there, she offered me to stay there for as long as I needed to, because we just hit it off. Although she didn't speak any English, I spoke barely more than 5 words of Spanish. We just developed this speechless, good relationship. And she ended up being this amazing medicine woman. I got sick. She took me to what she called was church. And this church was in this little hut that had this guy inside of it, behind this wall. And they took these herbs and they like did these herbs around me to like cleanse my energy field, I guess. And then I went in behind this curtain where this guy was, and he like felt my energy, and he told me exactly how I was feeling and what was going on with me internally. And there was no way he would have known that. But what they told me there is that he channels Christ, that he is a vessel for Jesus to work through, and that he is able to sense all this. So the woman ended up having all these herbs and things growing at her hotel that this guy suggested. And I stayed there for a few weeks. And then it was time for me to move on. I was just feeling this inspiration and guidance to continue on my journey. And so I traveled around the country and then eventually ended up in Palenque, Mexico, where my intention this day was to go deeper into the jungle of Palenque to find a Mayan tribe to live with and learn from. But God had other plans on this really hot day, April 1st, actually. And the only person that stopped on this really hot day was going the other direction. He was going towards Cancun. I personally had no desire to go to Cancun because I wanted to explore authentic Mexico, not, American. Mexico. Yeah, exactly. So I got in the car with him. He was driving all crazy. It was spring break for him. And I was in the back seat. He picked up someone else, like a friend of his in Mexico City. And he was just driving crazy. He was passing all the vehicles. He was passing the cars that were passing the cars. And eventually we were going uphill, and he saw headlights coming from the other side. And he lost control. He tried to get back behind this big bus that we were passing at the time. He tried to get behind it. He lost control, and he fishtailed into a guardrail, which jerked me so hard and fast forward. I had enough energy to get out of the car that was smoking and everything. I got out and I was laying on the road, and I was thinking to myself, there's no way that I'm dying right now. I felt myself bleeding internally. Like, there's no way that I'm dying right now. I'm just remembering who I am and what I'm here to do. There's no way that it's ending. And then it got to a point where I was like, all right, God, if I'm meant to leave this body to go on to my next incarnation or whatever happens after this life, then, so be it. And as soon as I surrendered to death, the ambulance showed up. They took me to a hospital. That hospital said there was nothing wrong with me. I know that I'm bleeding internally. I feel it. So they took me to another hospital, which ended up being a private hospital. They saw that there was something wrong with me, but they couldn't do anything because I had no money. So they eventually took me to another hospital, and I was just fading out. I felt like I was about to just be off this earth. And next thing you know, I wake up and I look down and I'm bandaged up on my stomach, and they ended up catching me right in time. I had holes in my intestines. I don't know if I would have died right away, but I was definitely
not in a good way. Not in a good way.
So from there, I came back to Florida after a week in the hospital in Mexico and healed up. And then I went to Europe a year later.
What happened to the guy that was driving it?
Oh, he was good.
He was good?
Yeah, he was all right.
Oh, Jesus.
And the girl next to me, or next to him, she had like a little scratch on her nose. Or no, he had a scratch on her nose. She had, I don't know, but thankfully, they were both okay.
So you were the worst out of all of them?
Yeah.
Okay, so you went back to Florida, healed up.
Yeah.
And then they say you went to Europe. Oh.
No one ever knocks on my door. Hey, what's up, man? I'm on an important call right now. I'm on an important call.
And this is it. This is podcasting right here. Life happens, people. This is what happens.
Hey, I'm actually on a podcast right now, man. I'll hit you up later. All right.
There we go.
It's so funny. This dude that I met months ago.
Yeah.
Is at the door. Like he's never
just
been
showed
here.
up. Like just showed up, yeah.
Yeah. That's funny. Here we go. All right.
All right. So you ended up in Europe now.
Yeah.
What made you decide to go to Europe? What was that?
So it was after a few months of healing up in Florida. I ended up traveled around again the U.S. I was hitchhiking this time between different communities. Actually, there's these certain communities that I found that are connected all around the world.
Okay.
And they're like faith-based communities.
Mm-hmm.
And I was hitchhiking between these communities to check them out, to sort of see what they were all about. And right. I had this, and there was this one very controversial one that they had in Germany. And so I felt this inspiration to go to Africa. Okay. And I was initially going to go to sorry, it's very, very distracting now with the dog barking. But I was initially going to go to Africa. I just felt this inspiration. I just wanted to go and travel the world and just show that it's possible to do without anything but faith. And I wasn't going to allow some incident in Mexico that left me not in a good way stop me from doing this mission. So I went to go get a ticket to Africa, but by the time my the money that I had given to me was cleared from my PayPal and my bank account, I wanted to leave on April 1st. The 1-year anniversary of the incident in Mexico happened. And by the time that the money cleared, the price of the ticket went up. But I saw that there was a layover in Germany on that initial ticket. So I'm like, all right, well, I can go to Germany. I can go check out this other community. And then from Germany, I'll just make my way to Africa. Just hitchhike across Europe or through a few countries in Europe. And then I'll find somebody with a boat and I'll go over to Africa. So I got a one-way ticket to Munich and landed with $120 and just the water bottle and the clothes I was wearing. And after, again, I spent the money really quick. I got a hostel room the first day again. And then the next day I got on a train and I took that train as far as it would take me until the conductor caught me without a ticket and threw me off. And then I just hitchhiked around Europe. That same day, I met a couple of guys at a grocery store, and one dude was like, I asked him where this town was, where this community that I was going to go visit was, and he like sort of gave me directions. It was quite a ways away. He's like, do you need anything? You need like a place to stay, some food, some money? I'm like, yeah, actually. All the above sounds good. Anyway, he ended up giving me a place to stay for like a week, and we had some good food and stuff. And then I ended up hitchhiking around. I found out that community that was out in Germany, that was shut down due to certain things that happened in the community that Germany does not like. Like it's illegal to homeschool your kids in Germany, and they're homeschooling their kids in Germany. So they took all the kids away and stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they all fled from Germany and went elsewhere.
Okay.
But that trip through Europe was pretty amazing. I ended up going through Germany. I did find some other communities to stay with. I went through Switzerland and into Italy. And again, no matter where I was, I never once went without a place to sleep or food to eat. I was just putting one foot in front of the other, praying and asking God to guide me. And he would always take me to the right people at the right time that would offer me a place to sleep or offer me food. Sometimes I would go into restaurants and I would offer to do some work in exchange for food. And most of the time they would just offer me the food for free without even allowing me to do any work. I made my way down to southern Italy after having encounters with a lot of refugees too that were fleeing from Africa and the Middle East, that were just so like these people that had nothing, but they wanted to share everything that they had. It was pretty like eye-opening to see how caring and loving these people were.
Yeah, I feel like it really shows you the beauty of people. Like this story itself shows you that people on a whole are good, that they can be generous, they can be caring, they can be, everything you need them to be at that moment, because you're going around with absolutely nothing and, making your way on this journey. And like you said, you never went without a place to sleep and without food. I mean, that's incredible. Incredible.
Oh, this is Starla, by the way, everybody.
Oh, hello. It's a lovely dog.
Yeah, it was incredible. It's been an incredible journey altogether, and yeah, it's sometimes I miss that part of my journey of going with nothing, and and having those experiences.
Did you make it to Africa?
I didn't make it to Africa, actually.
You didn't make it to after all that. You didn't make it to Africa.
No,
that's a shame.
Actually, I made it to the port town of Bari, Italy, in the southeastern region of Italy, and in Puglia. And my intention there was to find somebody with a boat to go from Italy to Greece and from Greece to Africa. But I just fell in love with that region of Italy, and I stayed there for a while. And I was surrendered. At that part of my journey, I was surrendered to never end up back in the U.S. again until I went all around the world. But then at that same time, there was something that I saw was really, really important happening in the U.S. And it was happening in Standing Rock, North Dakota, which was many native tribes coming together, fulfilling a prophecy of a lot of tribes from all over the world were coming together. They were standing up against a prophecy that they had of a black snake going through the country and all this. They thought that this pipeline that was illegally going through this through their land.
Right. Yeah. I remember the pipeline being built. I do remember that. I vaguely remember that the Native Americans were all banding together. They didn't want the pipeline to go in, and I do remember bits about this. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to go and just be a part of all these tribes coming together and learn and just be there to support. And so I ended up finding a way back to the U.S. Got a ticket to California, and eventually made my way out there. And that's hey, all right. I might go back in my bedroom. She's just wanting to bite me now. So
ready to play.
Yeah, she wants to play. Yeah, so that was my trip in Europe, which, a lot of stories from there, a lot of stories that happened in between this whole journey, obviously. And it's all led me to just really wanting to be of service, in a sense, to create a platform that would help promote unity and to help promote people into seeking out what God's will is for them, and to seeking out what the deeper meanings of life are in general. Yeah, like what their specific purpose is.
It's amazing. It sounds like you've been on like such an amazing and incredible ride. I mean, incredible lows and imagine incredible highs as well. So how long have you been sober now? How long have you been in recovery now?
I've been, I started smoking weed again over the summer because that had been a thing that, like, a nice little trick of the enemy over throughout this journey. So I stopped. I stopped again, like about 3 months ago.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's been this dance this whole time. With sometimes we do come into life and not.
You would be what they call California sober.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
It's like a term now that people use that they
really?
Smoke, but they don't do anything else. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't.
I heard it. I heard it somewhere where, not too long ago, and people were saying that California sober is you don't drink, you don't do other drugs, but you do smoke weed.
Yeah. Some people see it as not that big of a deal. For me, it just brings me to a very low point of not being able to get in. That's like the main one that, like, the devil or the addiction has tried to get me in various different ways, but
that's the one that gets you.
It always been the one that would capture me. Yep.
That's interesting. That's interesting that's the one that gets you, because that's the one that's probably like the least of most people's worries is weed.
Yeah.
But I mean,
luckily the coke, I was able to get off that fine. Everything I was able to, but the weed was always just right there, ready to, because of that lie that it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah,
and at least kind of for me it is.
And it's like a less assuming type of drug, and like most people can smoke it and leave it. They can't. It's when I was struggling with alcohol, I smoked weed, but I knew it was one of those things that I could do, and that I could pick up a joint tomorrow, smoke it, and then just be done with it and not ever do it again for months and months and months, or years and years and years. It wouldn't matter. But if I picked up a bottle of alcohol, I'd be an absolute monster. And it's just it's different vices for different people. And I think if that's the one that gets you, then that's the one that gets you. And there's nothing you can do about that other than to abstain from it and stay away from it, and not believe that lie, right? Not believe the lie that you're telling yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are you up to now? What is your current status? What are you doing in life? And I imagine you look like you're settled. You have a home. You look like you've got some possessions. You don't just have a rucksack and you're not just traveling with the clothes on your back.
The last few years I've been traveling in a school bus that I got, a different my second bus, and converted it. I've been traveling around the U.S. with it. And I was actually, this last summer, I was living up in Northern California, a little further north, in this place called Mount Shasta. And I was heading down to Southern California, to Joshua Tree, California. And on my way down there, and this last few years, although I've been traveling in a vehicle. I've also been basically very much traveling off of faith, like the majority of the time not having any money, just knowing that God was calling me to go somewhere. So I was just going, and the rest was working itself out. Sometimes I had a couple of small businesses here and there, but this last year especially, I'd been going with nothing. Well, this last 2 years, I've been going with nothing, and it was just all working out. Now I'm away from Mount Shasta to Southern California in the bus with the dog and the my girlfriend that I was with up till recently. She was from Brazil. She had to go back to Brazil. We were passing through this town called Livermore and pulled over to get some fuel, and the bus broke down. No. And so that's how I ended up where I am now. So I broke down.
Bus number 2 failed you again. Oh, no.
Yep, in this town, but I believe God has everything happen for a reason. And since I've been here, I've connected to many different ministries and many different organizations that are doing what my inspiration is to do in life, which is to help people like the houseless community, to help people who are just down on their luck, and to help people find their connection to God, and to also help feed people good food too. So I've connected to these different ministries like that. And I'm here right now in Livermore, California, basically just planning my next moves. I'm going to be here for another 3 months working 2 jobs. I have 2 jobs that I'm working right now, but I'm going to be focusing on saving up money through those so I can get another vehicle, perhaps an RV to continue to travel in. But now I'm going to be focusing on speaking, sharing my story out to the world. And so thank you so much for giving me a platform to do that on as well. And I also have this big 30-foot trailer that converts into a stage. It like folds down on the side, it transforms into a stage. And the intention with that is to turn it into a mobile ministry, in a sense, to go and do these pop-up Holy Spirit events in these lower income areas and places with heavily populated like houseless communities, to go and pop up and connect people to resources on how to get off the streets, on how to get off drugs, have worship bands there, have good healthy food being cooked there to be given out for free, and have different discipleship classes happening throughout the course of 1 to 3 day events that are all free for people to attend, whether it be the houseless community or the Wall Street community, but having a thing that will just attract people from all walks of life to help people, with a big focus on the houseless and drug addicted community of that. Yeah, that's going to be one of the biggest focuses of it.
That's honestly, that sounds awesome. Like that sounds like a cool thing. That's such a cool thing to do, and to because like you want to be doing service to people, and I think that's greatly commendable, and to tremendously helpful to the people that are out there that are struggling. People in active addiction are just looking for hope, and hopefully that is something that you can provide to people, is a bit of hope and a bit of direction, because that's what some people are looking for. That's what they need, that. So I think that's a great thing that you're trying to do, man. And your story, I think, is incredible too, because it's a crazy journey, like from the bottom to the top. And I think it's inspiring for people to hear these real stories, and people recover in all different types of way. And I think showing everybody that there's a different way to recover, and there's different ways to get through the tough times and get through your addiction and come out the other side. And I think it's great what you're doing. So continue to do it, continue to build it. I'm happy to share this platform with you. and give you a voice to speak to people. And I hopefully, you get some listens off this and some views off this, and it'll help you grow what you're trying to do.
Thanks so much, James. I really appreciate it, brother. And thank you so much for having this platform again for people like myself to come on and share their stories and testimonies.
Yeah, I mean, it's just for me, this whole process has been about, like you said, like service, giving back. I'm trying to, it's for me, but it's for others. It helps me in my recovery, and hopefully it helps other people find recovery, or it shows them, people's journeys, and lets people tell their stories. And hopefully that's inspirational and motivational, and, leads people to seek out the better parts of their life, or, find the deeper meanings, like you're saying, to find their spiritual guidance, and to find recovery, and build the best life possible for them.
True that. Yeah.
Well,
that happens.
Is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap this up?
I just want to share maybe just a prayer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I just want to pray and say thank you, God. Thank you so much, God, for having us here today, for bringing whoever has seen this, who is watching this here today. And I just ask you, Lord, to continue to guide us, to continue to guide our steps through this journey, through this walk of life with you. Thank you, Lord, for everything that you continue to do, for everything that you continue to reveal to us, Lord. Thank you for keeping us sober and for keeping us focused on your grace and on your glory. Continue to guide us, Father God. Appreciate you. Thank you. And thank you. Amen.
Amen. All right, so I'm going to end this, and this is going to be an easy one. This is for me. I want to end my podcast now with 3 things that you need in your recovery. What are 3 things that you do in your recovery that keep you going? So, like, some people journal, some people do yoga, some people do meditation. What are 3 things that are like must-haves for your recovery?
Prayer, good people, like a good community of people around, and patience with this dog. Great, guys. All right, so prayer, a good community of people, and this vulnerability, really, just being honest and vulnerable with that, with those people, and within prayer, with God and with others.
Awesome. That's amazing. Yeah, those are great. Those are really great. So Zach, I'd like to thank you for sharing your story. I totally appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And yeah, man, just keep doing what you're doing, and hopefully just stay in touch, man. We'll stay in touch. We'll stay in communication. Let me know how you're doing. But yeah, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, James. Appreciate you, brother. Take care. Have a blessed night.